All right, you've given us quite the stack of documents on Salzer Electronics Ltd.
We have.
Yeah, there's a lot here. We've got financial statements,
Mhm.
company reports, even a transcript from their latest earnings call,
Yeah.
and a company presentation, too.
A lot to dig into.
It seems like we've got everything we need to get a really good understanding of this company, their business, their industry, and their potential for growth.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're here to do. We want to make sure that you understand this company. We want to give you those key insights so that you can make an informed decision.
Exactly. So maybe we could start off by just talking about Salzer Electronics Ltd. Like, what's their story? What do they do? What makes them tick?
Well, they actually have a really interesting history. They started back in 1985.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So they've been around for a while.
With a single product.
Yeah.
Cam-operated rotary switches.
Cam-operated rotary switches.
These are really important in a lot of industrial applications. So that was their start. But then they didn't just stay with that one product. They were very strategic.
Okay.
And they expanded their product portfolio. So they started making contactors, relays, panels, energy savers, toroidal transformers, and even modular switches, wires, and cables.
Wow. That's a lot of stuff.
It is.
It sounds like they've come a long way from just that one cam-operated rotary switch. So it seems like they've got a hand in a lot of different parts of the electrical industry.
Yeah, definitely. And that's been really key to their success, this diversification.
Okay.
But it's not just that. It's not just about like how many different things they make.
Right.
They've also really focused on building strong relationships.
Okay.
And a reputation for being a really dependable company. For example, they've had a really long association with Larsen and Toubro.
L&T.
Yeah, exactly, which is, one of India's leading engineering and construction companies.
Yeah.
And they're also the largest supplier of rotary switches to Indian Railways, which, says a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so they've got a good mix of products, they've got these strong partnerships, and they've got this track record, so they can prove themselves.
Yeah.
But how do they stand out? It's such a competitive market, especially in India. The electrical industry is huge.
Yeah.
How do they differentiate themselves?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they really focus on customization. They don't just mass produce things. Yeah. They really try to tailor their products to the specific needs of what are called original equipment manufacturers.
OEMs.
OEMs, yeah.
So they're not just a company that supplies parts. They're like a partner.
Exactly.
Working with these clients to develop custom solutions.
Exactly. And that takes a lot of in-house capabilities.
Yeah, for sure.
To be able to do that.
Yeah, it's not something that every company can just do.
Right. And they've really invested a lot in their manufacturing and R&D infrastructure.
Yeah.
To be able to do this. So they have multiple in-house manufacturing facilities, which means that they can control the quality. They don't have to rely on someone else to make their products. They can make sure that they're optimized, and also they can be very adaptable to customer needs that are always changing.
Yeah, that's important. And R&D, that makes sense. They're not just like relying on what they already make. They're constantly trying to think of new products to meet those demands.
Yeah, absolutely. They're constantly innovating and staying one step ahead of everyone else.
So it's almost like they're building like a moat around their business.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And another thing that they do is they're really committed to quality.
Okay.
Like they have, I don't even know how many international certifications, ISO 9001, ISO 14001, they have the CE marking, they have the UL marking.
Oh, wow.
CB, RHS, there's so many more.
That's a lot.
It is.
So these are all like international standards.
Yeah, it's like it tells their clients, hey, you can trust us, we're safe, we're reliable, we care about the environment,
Yeah, they're checking all the boxes, basically.
Yeah.
Quality, custom solutions, they have these partnerships, commitment to innovation.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like they're in a really good place.
Yeah.
But, what about the bigger picture?
Yeah.
Like, what's the industry that they're in like? What kind of growth potential are we talking about?
Okay, so that's where it gets really interesting. So the Indian engineering and electrical sector is projected to grow at a compound annual growth rate.
CAGR?
Yes, CGR of 10%, which is pretty huge.
Oh, wow.
And this is being driven by, infrastructure development. India's real estate market is like booming. There's so much industrial activity.
Yeah.
And within that sector, a huge portion of Salzer's businesses in this area called cables and wires.
Okay.
And that makes up 39% of the total market.
39%. That's huge.
It is.
So even just in India, there's so much room for them to grow.
Right. And of course, they're expanding internationally, too.
They are, yeah. So what's the global outlook? What's their core business like globally?
Well, the global switchgear industry is another really important area for them.
Okay.
And it's expected to grow a lot. So it's projected to grow from $85.71 billion in 2023 to $117.86 billion by 2028.
Okay, so that's like 6.4% CAGR.
Exactly.
That's huge. What's like, I mean, is it just, is it population growth, economic development, or is it something else that's driving this need for switchgear?
It's actually a combination of factors. So yeah, you're right. More people, more urbanization, people want a higher standard of living, so they need more electricity.
Yeah.
But on top of that, we're seeing a lot more electric vehicles.
EVs.
Yeah, EVs, and also trains. So transportation is becoming more electric.
Right. So we're going to need more charging stations. We're going to need
Exactly.
more of a way to manage that.
Exactly. More switchgear to handle all those electrical loads.
Yeah, it's all connected.
It is.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about renewable energy.
Right.
Solar, wind power.
These are important.
Huge.
Yeah.
And they need specialized switchgear, because the energy output, it's not constant.
Right.
So you got to manage that.
So it's not just about producing more electricity. It's about managing it in a different way.
Yeah. More intelligently, more sustainably.
Yeah. And that kind of brings us to smart meters.
Yeah.
Salzer is involved in that space too.
They are.
Which is a really interesting part of the market that's going through a lot of change right now in India.
Absolutely.
So I was curious, like, what's going on in the Indian smart meter market?
Okay.
And how's Salzer taking advantage of that?
Well, the smart meter business in India, it's really dynamic right now.
Okay.
A lot's changing. Because the government's involved,
Yeah.
there are technological advancements, and there's just this growing need to manage our energy better.
Yeah, for sure.
So the government, they've launched this program. It's called the Revamped Distribution Sector Scheme, or RDSS.
RDSS.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's basically trying to make power distribution companies, these discoms,
Okay.
more efficient and, financially stable.
Okay.
And a huge part of this is rolling out smart meters.
Okay, so the government is really pushing for these smart meters, but what's the big deal?
Yeah.
Why should people care?
Well, for consumers, it's great because smart meters can tell you in real time how much electricity you're using.
Oh.
So you can see, where am I wasting energy? How can I lower my electricity bill?
Right.
And some of them you can even pay as you go.
Okay.
So you can really budget your electricity expenses.
Well, you have more control over what you're doing, and like transparency.
Exactly.
But it's not just about individuals.
No, not at all.
The utility companies are also benefiting.
Yeah, absolutely. So for utility companies, they can do their billing much more accurately. They have fewer losses, because sometimes there's theft or just inaccurate readings.
Right.
They can manage the grid better,
Right.
And they can also encourage people to use electricity at different times, like not during peak hours,
Okay.
which can help balance the load.
Yeah, and it's cheaper to
Exactly.
generate power when it's not peak hours.
Exactly.
No.
It's a win-win, really.
Yeah, it sounds like a win-win,
Yeah.
Better information for consumers, more efficient operations for these utility companies.
Absolutely. And, the Indian government wants to install 250 million smart meters by 2025.
Wow, that's a lot of smart meters.
It is. And that's not even counting, agricultural connections and stuff.
So there's a lot of potential there.
Huge potential. And Salzer, they're in a great spot to really be a part of this,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. This is all really fascinating.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see how this is all playing out in their financials. Like, how are they actually doing?
Yeah, let's take a look. Let's shift our focus to their numbers and see how all of these industry trends are actually affecting their bottom line. So let's start with their revenue growth. For the year ending March 31st, 2024, their total revenue was 166.31 crore.
Okay, so that's over 1 billion rupees. That's a lot. But I'm really curious about, are they growing?
Yeah, are they just kind of maintaining or are they actually expanding their market share?
Exactly.
That's the key question. And the good news is it looks like they're definitely growing.
Yeah.
So that 1,166.31 crore represents a 12.45% increase compared to the previous year.
Okay, so they're not just surviving, they're actually thriving.
Yeah, exactly. They're gaining ground.
And that aligns with what we were just talking about with those positive industry trends.
Right.
But, I mean, revenue growth, it doesn't really tell the whole story, right?
You got to look deeper.
Yeah, where's this growth coming from? Like, are all their products doing well?
Right.
Or is it just one or two things that are driving it?
Yeah, that's a great point. We need to see what's really fueling this growth. So if we break down their revenue sources, we can see that their industrial switchgear business is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Their wire and cable businesses are also doing really well, adding a lot to their overall revenue.
So it's a good mix.
Yeah, definitely.
They're not too reliant on just one product or one area.
Exactly.
Which is a good thing.
It is. And remember how we talked about their international expansion?
Oh, right, yeah.
Their export sales are actually a real bright spot for them. They make up 26.93% of their total revenue right now. And we're seeing really strong growth in North and South America and in Europe, too.
Okay, so they're really tapping into those new markets, which is great.
And don't forget, we have that transcript from their Q2 FY25 earnings call.
Right, yeah.
That gives us an even more up-to-date look at how they're doing.
Okay, so what does that tell us?
Well, for Q2 FY25, their revenue actually increased by 22.62% year over year.
Oh, wow. That's even better than their annual growth rate.
It is. They're really gaining momentum.
It sounds like they're doing really well.
Yeah, and again, a lot of this growth is coming from those same areas, industrial switchgear and the wire and cable businesses.
They're really killing it in those segments.
They are.
Okay, so we've talked about revenue, and it sounds like they're in a good place, they're growing, but, revenue is only one part of the picture.
Right.
What about their profits? Like, are they actually making money from all this revenue growth?
Yeah, exactly. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters, right?
Yeah. Are they profitable?
Exactly. So let's look at some of their profitability metrics. Their EBITDA, which is basically their earnings before all the fancy accounting stuff.
Okay.
For the year ending March 31, 2024, it was 116.98 crore. That's a big jump, 21.98% increase from the year before.
Wow, that's a nice increase in profit.
Yeah.
But, I'm also curious not just about the overall number, but also about their margins.
Yeah. Are they getting better at turning that revenue into profit?
Exactly. Like, are they becoming more efficient, or are they just profiting more because they're selling more?
Right. So their EBITDA margin, which is basically how much profit they're making as a percentage of their revenue,
right,
that actually went up by 78 basis points to 10.03%.
Okay.
So they're getting better at what they're doing.
So they're not just riding the wave of, like, the growing market. They're actually, like, managing their costs better.
Right. They're getting more efficient.
Okay, so what about the actual profit, like the money they take home?
You mean their PT, their profit after tax?
Yeah, that's
what really counts. So their PET for the year was 47.07 crore. That's up 18.80% from the year before.
So their net profits are increasing.
Yep.
Okay, good. And what about their earnings per share?
Their EPS.
Yeah, like how much profit are they making per share of stock?
That came at 27.38 per share for the year.
Okay, so they're growing their revenue, they're profitable, they're managing their costs well. That's all really good news.
Yeah, it is.
But I'm also interested in how they're expanding. Like, we talked about their international growth, but how are they reaching new markets?
So as we discussed, their export growth is a big part of their strategy, especially in North America, Europe, and the Middle East.
Yeah.
They're really succeeding at getting into new markets.
Especially that 69% surge in exports to North America. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah, it shows they're doing something right.
They are. What about their order book?
That's where it gets a little tricky.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the sources you gave us don't have specific details about their order book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no exact figures on the size or anything like that.
So we don't really know how much business they have lined up for the future.
Not exactly, no. But we can make some educated guesses based on what we do know.
Okay, like what?
Well, their revenue is growing, they're expanding into new markets, their key product segments are doing really well, so all signs point to a pretty healthy order book.
I mean, that makes sense. If they're getting new clients and expanding their market share, then their order book must be growing too, right?
Right, and having a diverse product range and expanding geographically helps them manage risk. They're not relying on any one market or product too much.
That's good.
It makes them more stable.
Yeah, it's always better to have your eggs in multiple baskets. So let's move on to their financial health. Are they managing their debt well? How's their cash flow?
Those are important questions. So we can see that their total rated facilities have increased from 310.62 crore to 410.62 crore.
So their debt has gone up.
It has, but it's important to consider the context here. CRISIL, which is one of the top credit rating agencies, has reaffirmed their long-term rating as stable.
Okay, so even though their debt has increased, they're still considered financially sound.
Exactly.
That's good. But earlier you mentioned something about their interest costs potentially putting a strain on their cash flow.
Right, so their interest and finance costs have gone up by 30.50%.
Wow, that's a big jump.
It is, and that could put some pressure on their cash flow, but their stable CRISIL rating suggests that they're managing it well. They're generating enough cash to meet their obligations.
So they're juggling things carefully.
Yep.
They're using debt to grow, but they're making sure they can still handle the repayments. Okay, so what about working capital?
Like, how well are they managing their inventory and collecting payments from customers?
Yeah, all that stuff.
Unfortunately, we don't have a ton of details on that from the sources you gave us.
Oh, okay.
No detailed numbers on things like inventory turnover or receivables.
So we don't know how efficiently they're handling that part of their business.
Not exactly, but there are a couple of things we can glean from the data.
Like what?
Their inventory turnover ratio has increased a bit, which could mean they're getting better at managing their inventory.
Okay.
And their trade receivables turnover has also improved, which suggests they're getting better at collecting payments from customers.
That's a good sign.
It is. It means they're managing their cash flow better.
Definitely. So after looking through all this, what stood out to you the most? Like, what were the key things that really caught your attention about Salzer?
Honestly, their evolution. Like how they started with that one very specific product.
Right.
And then they very strategically expanded their product line.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they were building those key partnerships and really focusing on quality. It's like textbook.
Yeah.
How to grow a company.
Yeah. It seems like it's really paying off for them now, you know?
Yeah.
They're in a good position to take advantage of everything that's happening in the industry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think another key takeaway is that focus on customization.
Right.
You know, they're not just churning out products. They're really trying to understand what their clients need and develop solutions that are specific to those needs.
Yeah, so it's not just like a transactional kind of relationship.
It's a partnership.
Yeah, they're like almost like consultants
Exactly.
in a way, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what do you think, like, what's your overall assessment of their prospects? Do you think you're going to keep growing?
Yeah.
Or are there, like, things that we should be worried about?
I think based on what we've seen, they're in a really good spot to keep growing. But obviously, there are always challenges.
Yeah, there's always going to be challenges. What do you think those are going to be for them?
Well, one of the biggest challenges for any company that's growing quickly is managing that growth.
Right.
You know, it can really strain your resources, your systems, even your company culture if you're not careful.
Right.
So they need to really focus on making sure that as they grow, the quality stays high and they keep that great customer service.
Yeah, you don't want to lose what got you there in the first place.
Exactly. And I think another big challenge is going to be staying on top of technology.
Right.
The electrical industry is changing so fast.
Yeah, for sure.
Digital technologies, automation, smart grids.
Yeah.
So they have to keep investing in research and development to make sure their products stay relevant and competitive.
So they need to be
agile,
innovative, constantly adapting.
Yeah. And then obviously there's always like the big picture stuff.
The macro environment.
Like trade wars, supply chain issues.
Exactly. Geopolitics, all that stuff can have a huge impact, especially for a company that's doing business internationally.
Right. So it's not just what they're doing internally. It's also about these external forces that they can't really control.
Exactly.
Right.
But even with all those challenges, there are some big opportunities out there for them too.
Okay. Like what?
Well, for example, the whole world is shifting towards renewable energy.
Right.
That's a huge opportunity for Salzer to expand what they offer.
Yeah, they could really capitalize on that trend. Exactly. And then there's the growing demand for things like smart grid technology and automation solutions.
Yeah, that seems like a natural fit for them.
Exactly.
With their expertise.
Right. So it all comes down to their ability to see what's coming and adapt their strategies to take advantage of those opportunities.
So kind of a mix of being proactive and reactive.
Exactly.
But based on everything we've talked about today,
yeah,
seems like Salzer's been pretty good at doing just that.
Yeah, I think so too.
They're strategic, they're efficient, they're innovative. It seems like they have a bright future ahead of them.
I agree.
But, as you said earlier, nothing's guaranteed.
Right.
The world can change in an instant. So ultimately, it's up to you, the listener, to take all this information
Hmm.
and decide what you think about Salzer.
Yeah.
What do you think their future holds? Hopefully, this deep dive has given you everything you need to make an informed decision.
We've really enjoyed going through this with you
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
breaking it all down.
Mhm.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time, keep exploring and keep learning.